Hi, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho. This is Ramanuj Mukherjee from iPreaders and LawSikho.com. And with me, I have Behnaaz Engineer, who is a higher living coach and not just living, she's also guides people in career and various aspects of life. And she's also incidentally my coach. She has been helping me over many different issues that I deal with in my career and business, and she has been really effective. So I have been requesting her for a long time that please come and join us on An Hour with LawSikho and share with especially the lawyer, law students community how a coach really helps. So I had heard this many a times that people say, what you are doing, even if you have thought it through, planned it, strategized it, you cannot see yourself. You always need somebody who can look at what you are doing over a long period of time and tell you where you are missing out on things, where you are not doing the things that something that somebody else, a coach, will tell you. Like for example, sports professionals, they all have coaches. They are great at their work, they're fantastic, but they still have coaches, and the coaches help them to get even better. So why not for professionals? Why not for business people? Why not for lawyers, for that matter? That somebody who can guide you in what you want to achieve and coach you around that. So my coach, I present to you Behnaaz Engineer, and she has done a lot of awesome work with a lot of people. She has been coach. First, she has been a corporate professional for 15 years, and after that, she started coaching as a profession. And she has coached a lot of extraordinary people, have created extraordinary results. Just to give you an example, for example, somebody comes to her and says that I want to be the COO in my company. I'm in the line for that. How do I achieve that? And she would guide that person over a year, and that person will achieve that goal, right? So this is the kind of work she does. And let us welcome Behnaaz. Hi.
Hi, Ramanuj. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, it's great to great to have you on An Hour with LawSikho, because I know we have spoken about this before,
Yes,
what I do, and finally you are here, and it's definitely great for me to have you.
as
And
well as me.
you have always guided and shown me the way for a lot of things, and for me to share that experience and knowledge with everybody else here, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, let's jump right into it. What do you say is coaching? Like, why would a professional, why would a lawyer? So, most of the people who watch An Hour with LawSikho are either law students or lawyers. So, why
Okay.
get specific professional coaching? What's the purpose?
Okay. So basically, one takes on a coach for various reasons. Just to speak of some of the most popular reasons that clients work with me to coach them is, for example, if they're working in their careers for a particular period of time and they want to take their career or they want to take their profession to the next level of business. And for whatever reason, it's been maybe stagnating for a while, or they feel that work that was really enjoyable a year or two ago and work that they were doing really well and successfully a year or two ago, maybe now does not give them the same amount of satisfaction. So and for whatever reasons, there's a certain amount of stagnation that has come at that point of time. uh, it is then that you actually go to a coach. And when we're working, for example, with professionals, with business people, we're touching a whole lot of things, a whole aspect of things. So we're touching upon values, we're touching upon beliefs, we're touching upon purpose. Why are they doing what they're doing? And when you start getting people back in touch with all these things, which are so deep rooted, is when you actually understand the core reason to that stagnation or to the dissatisfaction that is happening at their current level, or for whatever reasons they're not being able to take their business or their careers to the next level.
Okay.
So that's one reason. There are plenty of reasons why one would coach with a coach. The other could be maybe long-term future planning, where and that's an excellent and that's an absolutely exciting space to work with a client on. because that's when a client is not being reactive, and they're actually using the full potential of coaching, which is exploring possibilities, which is exploring opportunities, which is about a different focus to what they're currently doing right now, talking about disruption. So that's another reason why a client would be coaching. The third could be a transition or change. For example, I've worked with a lot of clients who have been very successful in their previous jobs. They've changed their jobs, and suddenly there's angst, there's anxiousness, there's performance issues, and for whatever reasons, they're not able to achieve the same amount of success that they did in their previous jobs. So there's something amiss again over there. Is it limiting beliefs? Is it performance issues? The space that's happening there. And lastly, there's also a group that come for professional coaching, but they want to overcome obstacles which are not job related. So for example, there's something happening in their personal life, and or there's something happening in a space outside of their professional life, and because of which their professional life is being affected. So there are a whole host of reasons why one would choose to work with a coach.
Out of all the reasons you said, for me personally, I would come to a coach because I have a very ambitious goal. And, while I'm dealing with it, I want to ensure that I reach that goal, and I want somebody to watch over me and actually
Okay.
with me to ensure that the goal is reached. And I think that's the reason that resonates the most with me. But you also coach people who have some sort of personal issues, right?
Yes. So again, personal issues, it gets into it's a space that you need to define a little clearly, because that's the key difference between a coach and a counselor. So for example, a counselor would work on a lot of they deal with situations where you require to cope with the situation, or you need to heal a past wound, or you need to adopt a lifestyle which is about trying to recuperate from a situation, something that is in the past, and it's about freedom from that pain. And that's counseling. So they would be the ones who would be able to diagnose and treat depression, bipolar disorders, post trauma stress, all of that. However, coaching is very different. Coaching is very action oriented. It's very goal oriented. It's very forward thinking. It's very future related. It's about exploring potential. It's about exploring new opportunities. And therefore, a coach has to, as me personally, it's a very fine line between when you want to suggest someone to a counselor versus when they are actually ready to work with the coach, because both the areas are very different actually. So so having said that, for example, if there's someone who's going through like a really hard, there was someone that I worked with where she came to me for professional goals, and while I was working with her on her professional goals, she went through a personal crisis. And at that point of time, the frame of the coachee plays a vital role, because she was in the space of moving forward. It was not in the space of why did that happen, in the victim mode, in terms of why does this always happen to me. She wasn't in that space. She was in the space of ready to let go and focus now on professional goals, which is why it was very, eh, she and I were a good fit, because she was in that space where she was forward thinking.
All right. So, if you can tell us more about, what kind of goals should professionals seek coaching for? Can you give us some examples
Okay.
that you have coached?
Okay. So, just to give you examples, when we're talking about coaching, we're just not talking about happy conversations. We're talking about tangible outcomes. And that is the crux of coaching, when you actually are talking about a tangible outcome. So every time that me and my client are setting goals, there are two aspects to a goal. The very deep aspect of the goal is purpose. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing whatever you're doing? And why do you want to achieve that goal that you want to achieve? And then is the tangible outcome. At the end of the day, the tangible outcome has to be very related to a black and white, like have we achieved it or have we not achieved it? And so it's very important to balance both of these when you're goal setting. So to give you an example, there was somebody I was working with where to her it was really, really important to get a promotion of a particular designation. But why did she want to do it? She wanted to do it so that she could be in the room where decisions are made, where she can make a difference, where she can value add to the company, to her clients, to society. And that was the purpose behind her goal. So it's very important because that, see, the work that we do, it's always to explore a certain facet of us. And therefore, to be very, very connected to the purpose of what you're doing is always a vital aspect of the tangible part of that goal.
Okay. So let's say, what I can think of that lawyers will have a goal. Say, for example, somebody wants to start their own law firm, or they want to move from one job to another job, which is a better job, or want a certain hike in their salary. So these would be like the usual goals that lawyers have. So can coaching, professional coaching, help in those goals?
Absolutely. How it can help is we're in a space and a time, and we don't dedicate enough time to authentic experience. And when I mean my authentic experience, I'm talking about an authentic dialogue with yourself. And coaching really helps in that aspect because it begins that authentic dialogue with yourself. It touches upon various things which you ordinarily would pass off as saying, you know, when you're with yourself, you do not dedicate a space, time, or energy to actually answering very, very vital questions which determine what your action is going to be. So
Okay, can you
very
give
often,
an example of this?
yes. So very often, for example, um, you would have someone saying that I want to maybe explore. So there was this client that I was working with, and her need was always to get a balance in terms of what she's doing with family versus her work.
Work-life balance, which is called.
Yes, so yes, I wanted to stay away from work-life balance, but yes. So that's what she was trying to achieve. And when we started speaking and we started understanding what her anchoring truth was, what made her heart sing, it was actually about being passionate about what she was doing. And this constant struggle of balance was not in alignment with her core value for passion. And therefore, she was always half at work, half at family, because there was that dual fight that was constantly happening. And she was never 100% at work or 100% with family. And it was always quantified. So
Right.
once you actually start understanding what your anchoring truths are, what your core values are, what is important to you, then what you're pursuing is in alignment to your core value.
Okay.
And therefore, it's easier to then pursue that.
Okay, so we do a lot of counseling for our students all the time, and we have students who say in the beginning of a course that I want to work in so and so company, or I want to work in a law firm like this, or I want to be an extraordinary lawyer in this area of law. Maybe let's say companies law, something arbitration law.
Correct.
Once they start working with us, we see that they're not putting in the required work, or after 2 months their goal changes. Like they initially said, I want to be in international arbitration. Another day says, no, I want to learn insolvency law, and this is what. Suddenly things keep changing, and we find it very challenging because how do you work with such students? And I keep thinking that, I wish they find a coach so that they get a balance as to what they really want.
Correct.
So what do you think, like, why does this happen? People constantly changing their, shifting their goalposts, and start an activity, invest in something, and then suddenly shifting. How does these things happen?
So I think what would help in a case like in a situation like this is when you spend some time to truly understand what your anchoring values are. So, for example, if you have three pillars, which are maybe there's some aspect of a particular stream that interests you, and you would club that under contribution to society, for example. Okay, or if you're talking about curiosity, or if you're talking about passion, if you're talking about adventure, you're talking about integrity, you're talking about freedom, there are two three pillars that you identify, and then every decision you make, you go back to those two three pillars and understand whether those are in alignment with your core values, with your core pillars. And when you see that there's a disalignment with the core value or with the core pillar, you need to maybe pause at that moment and understand why is it that you're pursuing what you're pursuing. Is it in alignment with your core values, with your pillars?
Okay. So, what, a lot of people are struggling with their careers. Like, why do you think this thing? Like, what are the usual problems people face in building their career? Because I think it's pretty straightforward. You have a set target and you work over a long period of time. You work on your skills. You work on developing your network and stuff like that. And your career should fall in place. What are the things that people usually struggle with?
Sorry, so there are two questions. So what was the question?
So, people often, like, we see a lot of people struggling with their career, right?
Yeah,
And if you look at it in a very straightforward way, say if somebody has to be successful as a corporate lawyer, they need to acquire knowledge, they need to acquire certain skills,
correct, correct,
to have a network, they need to do a certain work well over a period of time, and that is
correct,
how you reach. There
correct,
is no other way.
correct.
But still, it's pretty straightforward, right? But still, people do not achieve it. Like,
Okay,
and a large number of people are, they take a lot of time to get there.
correct.
Many people never get there, in fact, and they struggle. There's a huge struggle involved in this entire process.
Okay,
Why so? Like, from a
okay.
point of view of a coach, what do you say?
So again, it's a process where you actually uh, maybe you sit down with someone or you sit down with yourself, and again, there's an evaluation. There's an evaluation of there are two things which make you successful at what you love, what you do. So one is ability, and the other is willingness. So when you're talking about ability, you're talking about the knowledge, you're talking about the skill, you're talking about the experience. Uh, you have to know very honestly whether you have what it takes currently to be successful. If there are any gaps there, you need to be extremely honest about addressing those gaps. And when we talk about ability, we do not talk about potential in this particular paradigm. When we're talking about ability here, we're talking about right now, this very second, where do I stand on experience? Where do I stand on skill? Where do I stand on knowledge? That will give you a very clear picture on ability. The second part of it is willingness. Where do you stand on willingness? Are you motivated? Are you inspired? Are you doing what it needs to do? Are you committed? And once you actually place yourself on ability and willingness, you get a very clear picture in terms of where exactly do you stand and what do you need to work on. A lot of people, for example, say, um, okay, to give you an example, there was somebody I was working with who was aspiring to be a COO. She was head of department and very successful at what she does, very good at what she does. Uh, Comes in first, leaves last, and she's a fabulous team worker. All of it is right. Okay, and yet not. She was not she was quite broken about the fact that she wasn't appointed as a CEO and the company was looking outside. And once we actually went through this exercise, um, it was so simple. She loved being HOD so much that she wasn't willing to let go of what it takes to be a COO.
Very
So
interesting.
she was so happy to have her client interaction. She was so happy to be accessible to everyone. She was so happy to do what she does so well that she was absolutely not ready to let go of a large part of what she does to facilitate some new learnings, to facilitate uh, you know uh, new interactions. And once you have this kind of a dialogue, and once you're very very honest with yourself as to where you are on this grid, it kinds of gives you a clearer picture in terms of where you are, what you need to do to bridge that gap.
Okay. So did she finally successfully bridge that gap?
In fact, the last day that we were working together, she got this fantastic letter and fantastic offer from her company, which was really an awesome way to close our session together. And yeah, she's doing absolutely well.
Okay. So, can you tell me about this? That I understand many companies and corporate houses hire professional coaches for their high-performing employees. So, how
Yeah.
does that work? What's your experience in that?
So, so when you're actually So there was a take that I had on that. When you talk about high performing individuals getting a coach, at some points it's looked at as a badge of honor, saying that because there was this person and he was performing so well and he has so much potential, there's a coach for him. Um, there's a whole segment out there which would actually benefit from coaching, and it's not restricted to high performing individuals. In fact, a lot of times you would have the whole section which has so much potential, and they could value so much out of coaching. And at some point, I think it's going to get there where coaching is going to be very accessible to a whole lot of more people. Like how earlier workshops and trainings were only accessible to a very small unit. And today you have a whole host of people who have access to coaches. So I think at some point of time that is definitely going to be the shift that's going to be happening.
Okay. But how can coaching help like a company? Like if a company or a law firm,
Yeah.
law is looking to
Yes.
uh, hire a coach for their
Yes.
team, how does it work?
So how it works is for example, where again I will speak from personal experience. I won't speak because there are a whole host of coaches out there who do different formats. So there's group coaching, there's one-on-one coaching, there's one-to-many coaching. There's different formats out there. So basically, how I would see it is people, especially at similar levels across departments, when you're coaching people at for example, if you're coaching HODs, you would coach HODs from different departments for the simple reason that there's synergy. There was another company who thought that they need to do a whole host of time management issues and time management training and time management workshops. After discussions, the problem was not time management. The problem was the department's inability to say no and the department's need to please. And so you have the company investing in time management and creating more time for people to take on more jobs they shouldn't be.
Okay. All right.
So you're working on different issues. So you need to understand the diagnosis needs to be a little right, because sometimes in our haste and sometimes when we don't have these authentic conversations with ourselves, there could be a misdiagnosis.
Got it. We have a couple of questions from our viewers, so we'll quickly take them.
Yeah,
Uh, we have a question from Anubhav. We'll take questions later also again, but let's
sure,
look at what we have got.
sure.
Anubhav Pandey is asking, what are the signs? How would I know that I need a coach?
What are the signs? Okay, sorry, what was the name?
After you answer this question, I'll want to answer it too. But
Okay. So sorry, what was the name? I missed the name.
Anubhav,
Anubhav. Okay. So to you, Anubhav, what are the signs that you require a coach? Is For example, just very similar to the stuff that I've already mentioned, but I will recap it in more detail. So, for example, when you want to move to the next level of what you're doing, and for whatever reasons you feel that you are not able to reach that full potential, uh, at that point of time, and you've done the tried and tested, so you've done everything and you've explored, you've done your research, you've seen your videos, you've explored various aspects of trying to fix it yourself, and for whatever reasons it's yet not improving the situation, you do need a third party perspective. You need to understand where your intent and your action is not being aligned, and having a coach at that point of time really helps the situation. Of course, if you're in a crisis, you will know you need a coach. It's or at other times when you want to do maybe long term future planning, you don't want to be reactive, you want to be proactive. And if, for example, you are your own boss and you have very few people at that level who who may be aligned, or you may want to vet what you're thinking to understand if it's in line with your beliefs, with your value systems, with your purpose. At that point, getting a coach is a good idea.
Okay. So, my thought on this is that if you are very ambitious, right? You don't want to do the usual things. So doing a easy task is fairly easy. Like, you see somebody else who has done it. There are maybe something you follow and you achieve those
Absolutely.
easily. But whenever you are aiming for something huge, like for example, if you're going to compete in the Olympics, okay,
Absolutely.
definitely get a coach.
Absolutely.
So if you are trying to be the best at something which is hard for you, then you better get a coach. Like for example, I would say if you are writing UPSC, okay, it may be fantastic to have a coach. I can imagine a lot of people can tremendously improve their performance. Not hiring UPSC trainer, not a teacher of UPSC subjects or somebody who prepares you in interviews and things like that, but somebody who actually helps you to strategize, because it's a huge task. There's a huge syllabus. There's a lot of things to do. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. Many moving parts. So strategizing and staying motivated, stay working on something over a period of time is not easy, right? So that is why I think people who are highly well organized tend to succeed, and there are a whole host of other people who are highly capable but maybe not organized. Like I am not a very well organized person. I get organized around the things that I really care about, but usually I'm not a very well organized person. So if I need to, let's say, attempt something huge and it really matters to me, I would want to have a coach, somebody who can actually watch over me and make sure that I'm taking the right steps, not missing out, not making big mistakes, not leaving out gaping loopholes that I don't realize that I'm leaving open, right? So, I mean, I think that whenever you are taking on a huge task, it's great to have a coach. Like, like I
Absolutely.
said, if you're going to play in the Olympics or the World Cup, get,
Absolutely, you've answered that beautifully, because you're right. Because taking the next level can mean many things to many people, and when you sum it up as saying being ambitious and being wanting to be the best at what you do, that is of course like taking that level to its optimum, and that's beautifully answered.
great. Now, I know this because this is how I decided that I really need to have a coach. So, one
So I
thing,
would, yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, please, you were saying something.
And that is something, based on your decision, that is something that is critical to a successful coaching relationship. So just to give your example for to work with, um, and I'm not just saying this because we're on this platform, but the reason why um, the reason why our relationship is a very successful relationship is the curiosity you come to the table with, the willingness to absolutely up your game, and the clarity that the answers are going to, you have the answers and you know that.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes you require somebody else to just mute the distraction, and you just require someone to maybe press the pause button on the chaos that we sometimes get carried away with. but you intrinsically know the answer lies within you, and you want to authentically dedicate time to explore those answers. And that is one of the reasons why everyone doesn't become a fantastic coachee. Because when you don't have the belief that you yourself have the answers, when you don't go into a coaching relationship with that core belief that you have the answers, that's going to be a disastrous coaching relationship.
Sure. This reminds me of an article I was reading today. So it was about, it was about success. And it says that there are two shifts that happen in the lives of extremely successful people. The first shift actually is very common. It happens to, maybe 30-40% of the population, is taking responsibility. There's a time in your life, maybe when you're a young adult or you're an adult, like, 20s, you realize that, you have to take responsibility for your life. And, whether a good outcome happens or a bad outcome happens, it's you. Okay.
Absolutely.
And this is the first shift. And when people do that, they start getting success. And when
Absolutely.
success happens, they get certain results. And then they start living. And what happens? This is the most people never experience the second shift. And why is that? Is because they start experiencing the this very important uh, results in their lives, and they start living for the results. One example I read in the same article, it says that, so imagine there's a musician, a talented person or non-talent. Actually, talent is a function of practice and efforts and everything.
Absolutely.
So a musician who, like, this is very common. Like, you can think of like famous bands, famous songwriters, musicians. They create early in their career. They have this breakout success, right? Their first album got a hit. The
Correct.
first movie big hit, and then they get success, right? So they get fame, they get
Correct.
money, they get whatever they wanted, and suddenly they stop being so great. The depth is missing. The next album is like,
Yes.
still it is, but it's not
Yes.
what the first one was. And
Yes.
early, early what they gave in their career. And it says this is where the second shift is critical. If it doesn't happen, you will not succeed. You have to understand that success doesn't come from you. It comes from environment. It comes from a team. It comes from you
Absolutely.
exploring things that you are not capable of today, right? You
Correct.
whatever you do your best. Uh, Another beautiful story I read there, that, the lady something Gilbert, who wrote, I don't remember her first name. She wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. And what happened is that after she wrote her first book, she was just not able to write her second.
Correct.
She knew that whatever she writes, it's not going to be as
Correct.
successful as the first book. And that book is like made into a movie. Julia
Correct.
Roberts is doing her. She knows that whatever she writes, it's never
Correct.
going to be so successful. And she couldn't write for years until she gave her the permission to fail. And she
Correct.
wrote a couple of books which were like not
Correct.
going nowhere. And then she could at least be creative and start writing again.
Correct.
And this is something I think where uh, a coaching relationship comes. We experience some success in our life, and then you cannot bring your best like you used to bring initially.
Correct. Correct.
And this is where coaching becomes critical for professionals. So you're a lawyer, you have experienced success, you have clients, you have some sort of recognition, and people come to you. But that's it, right? Is that over? Like, is that what you are going
So
to
I, th- I think
do?
I think what happens there is, and this happens also in the professional space, where you have someone who's been very, very successful, um, top position, you change jobs, and for some reason, the secret sauce is just missing over there. And so you've been so successful, but the second stint doesn't go as planned in your head. And I think a lot of times what's happening there is that when you work the first time around from pure intent, you're very aligned to your purpose. You're very aligned to why you're doing this. And you work from an absolutely pure place of just making sure that anything and everything that you do is in alignment with what gives you joy and with what is a part of you expressing your highest self.
Right.
What happens then is the success is it's a heady intoxication, And then somewhere in line, you're chasing the success, which is not a winnable game because it's third party. So
Right.
you have to, the second time round, it requires great discipline, it requires great focus, and it requires quietness of the mind to be true to the purpose, to stay true to why you began doing what you were doing. What did you enjoy most of when you were doing what you were doing? And so, again, the game becomes very winnable because then your objective is to live to your true purpose, and that's 100% in your hands. Success is just an outcome. Success cannot ever be the goal.
Right.
So when you've decided to stay true to intent and therefore stay true to the action, um, that's when you're just staying true to the purpose. And
Okay.
you're not chasing something that's not a winnable game. Success is never in your hands. You can't say I want to have a successful show, a successful movie, a successful, you can't make that the goal, a successful meeting, a successful relationship, because it's always got other people involved.
Right.
What you can make, how you can make that winnable is, I'm going to give this particular meeting my 100%, or I'm going to give this particular relationship my 100% to explore certain facet of myself. That's a winnable game because that's 100% in your hands. Your effort, your time, your focus, your dedication, it's in your hands.
Right. This just this took me back to all the students that I keep talking to, and they say that this law firm did not entertain me. I interned here and I got rejected, and I gave this interview and it didn't work. And I keep telling them, why? How does it matter? It is not relevant. Why don't you work on becoming a good lawyer? Like, you study this, you learn this, you work for free for people if you have to, but become a good lawyer and everything will fall in place. But they'll be like, no, but there's one more interview coming. How do I succeed in that? You cannot, there are tricks and tips for interviews, how to present yourself. But in the end of the day, who's sitting in the interview? What do you bring on the table? That is something that you have to work on. Like, you cannot just think that I'm going to fool people and get a job. Even if you get that job, it's not going to work out. So, I totally understood that when you said this, that, the true purpose is to become a great lawyer, to become very effective as a lawyer. And
Then your
how,
actions are entirely different. Then you're not talking about wearing the best suit and getting the best file and putting the best foot forward. Then you're talking about completely different action steps. Then your action steps are focused completely on what it takes to be a good lawyer. And when you work from that premise, your your actions are going to be entirely different versus I want to land that job, because then your actions are entirely different.
right. This conversation gave me clarity as to what to say to people when I deal with this. So,
Yes.
uh, how do you think even students can benefit from professional coaching or this kind of coaching?
Actually, everyone can benefit from coaching. So, like I told you, it all eventually comes down to why you're doing what you're doing. So, for example, there was this swimmer, and her mom wanted me to coach her because she wants to become a professional swimmer. And somewhere down the line, with the competition, with the competitiveness of the whole thing, it was just killing the sport for her. And when professionally you stop enjoying doing what you're doing, it's just downhill from there. So winning a competition is a byproduct. That may be part of the goal, but you have to make the goal winnable. So you have to say that I will do my 100%, and if I do X is when I know that I have given my 100%. Because I do it for the love of swimming, I do it because I don't want to be anywhere else but in that water, competing against myself to push my limits, to reach greater heights. And that is true for any profession, whether you're a student, whether you're a law student, whether you're in athletics, whether you're pursuing your MBA, your management. It doesn't matter. Are you staying true to your purpose? Why are you giving the exam that you're giving?
Okay.
And once you're very, very clear about why you're doing what you're doing, again, your actions are very, very, which is why everyone has the own answers, which is why everyone has their own answers to to the solutions, because you yourself will know what you want, and then to pursue that and not be misguided by low hanging fruits is discipline.
Okay. So, we have another question from Komal Shah. She's asking, thank you so much for bringing up balance between work and family life. Where really does the balance lie?
um, so one is the biggest thing one has to do is be again very, very clear in terms of expectations. Sometimes we set ourselves such unwinnable games that it is clearly we've set ourselves up for failure even before it happens. Okay, so for example, like how someone says, I want to success is the benchmark or parameter. I mean, that's not in your hands. Then if you say that you have to figure out, there is an exercise which we do which is on loss and which is on gain. What do you want to gain at the end of the day from the family? What do you want to gain from your work? And it's about then trying to make sure that not any one of them are compromised. So if you have and you have to be very clear in terms of expectations. So for example, there was this mother that I was working with who was going back to the professional space after having two children. And for whatever reason, she was not able to give her professional space the amount of time that it required. What was happening was that she thought that there was a whole lot of guilt that was happening there, in terms of she thought she was losing spending quality time with her children, but in fact what she was and therefore the love, and therefore all those things that happen, but what she was gaining in fact was personal self-respect.
Okay.
So you have to be very clear in your head why you're chasing what you're chasing and what is truly important.
Okay. So once you figure out what is important, what do you do?
Then it's very clear. Then the action steps are not a struggle. And then what happens? Then what happens is again with so for example, if you're talking about, then you've identified that you're dealing with guilt. You will acknowledge that guilt, and you will tell the inner critic. You'll quieten the inner critic, and you'll say that there's the inner sage which requires to do stuff which will increase your self-respect for yourself, and then you will pursue actions that are in line with that.
Okay.
You will prioritize profession or family depending on which is, which is taking the beating.
Okay.
And you work from a place of character, you work from a place of self belief, you work on a place of values. For example, you will base your decision then whether to stay up late or not at night. You will base your decisions from a very different place altogether. Are you going to miss your so for example, if you value being fair, okay, are you going to stay late just because it looks right and then miss your child's concert? That's not a great place to make that decision from. So you would rather go for your child's concert even though it may not look right.
Okay. So, if both home and like the family and work is important to me, then how do I balance, like, because both are important, right? So how does it work? Yeah.
So that is these are solutions that you don't again, it comes down to identifying what is your pillar. There are certain pillars that you will identify, for example, which you will not overstep. For example, if I'm identifying a pillar which is respect for me, which respect is important. At any point of time, are my work decisions disrespecting my family? Or at any time, is my family life disrespecting my work? And that is your qualifier in terms of how you make that decision.
Okay.
So sometimes I may need to miss work to attend a match which is really, really important. and thereby respecting that importance, I will do that. But then I will make that up at some point eventually to respect. So you work from a different place. You don't work from guilt. You're not half at the match and half at office. Because when you're at the match, you're dying and you're saying, I wish I was in office. And when you're in office, you're dying and saying, I wish I was at the match.
Got it. We have a question from Manoj Singh. He's asking at what stage a person should seek for professional coaching and how much does professional coaching cost? So if you can give some idea.
Okay. So, at what, sorry, what was the first question?
At what stage should someone seek professional coaching? You answered this, I think, already, but if you want to add anything.
Uh, Again, stages, yeah, I think, yeah, we have been covering that quite extensively, where the stages basically, like you said, ambition could be one critical factor when you want to reach bigger things, better things. The other is when your tried and tested methods are just not working. You can't go on saying I'll be positive and it'll be fine. You got to change something in your methodology. You got to say change something in your input to make sure that the output is different. So at that point you will seek coaching, saying that you can't keep saying that I'll figure this out, it'll get better. Because if that's been your mantra for some time and things haven't improved, then that's a clear indicator that you do need a coach, or depending on whatever the diagnosis is, you do need help, professional help.
Okay. So the second part of the question is how much does it cost?
How much does it cost?
Idea as to what different coaches charge, or
So coaching, again, the spectrum of fees is very, very wide. The nature of work is again very wide. So the fees that you will work with for long-term goals would be different, because the duration that you work with a person is different. So there are some people that you would who have short-term goals and you would work with them maybe only for 3 months. There are other people who have long-term goals and you need to work with them over a period of a year. So, and like with anything, you have a whole range of fee structures that coaches work with. They go up into lakhs and lakhs. They are into thousands. So it actually depends on the nature of work that you do. It depends on the experience the coach has. And at the end of the day, it's an investment, it's a value. So there's a whole range.
so I know a lot of people who find coaching expensive and because of that they never tried. So what
Correct.
would you put thought on that?
Okay. So, expensive is actually a very, very subjective term. If you club expensive, if you club it all with need versus luxury. For example, if you ask 5 people what they need and what they consider luxury, you will get 5 different answers. If you ask a family of 5 what they consider need and what they consider luxury, you will get a heated argument. So that's very subjective. But when you come down to the crux of it, which is it customized? Yes, it is highly customized. Is it effective? Yes, it's highly effective. Does it give you an ROI? Is it something that is going to is the you have to understand expensive versus investment. And I think when you invest in something like coaching, it's not about 3 months, it's not about 1 year. These are changes that stay with you for a very, very long period of time. And very successful coaching, very rarely would you see people fall back into previous patterns, because the crux of coaching is a paradigm shift, where you're changing your lens, where you're viewing things and yourself from a very, very different place, where you're more connected to yourself authentically. And therefore, that investment is an investment which is very highly valuable.
So this is about ROI, right? So you should judge it from the point of view of return on investment. So if you spend some money, you should get more than that back. And
Absolutely, absolutely. And in most cases, that will always happen. See, again, that's that benchmark. So for example, when you're working on tangible goals and you talk about a coaching fee versus and again, it depends on what level of people who are seeking coaching. So for example, that tangible result and that ROI would make sense to someone who is earning. But for a student who is not earning, that same fee at instantaneously might not give him the ROI that it would give to maybe an executive or a leader or a higher management client. So that is again specific from client to client. Having said that, it is an investment. So I don't think it should be looked at as a narrow lens of too expensive, unless you've actually given the breakthrough sessions a try and you've actually experienced the shift that coaching involves.
Okay. So, how can people try it out? If they want to really try it out, is there a way they can find out, whether coaching suits them, whether it works or not? Also,
Okay.
before you answer this question, I also wanted to ask you, if somebody decides to have a coach, how can they find a good coach for themselves?
Okay. So that's actually an excellent question, because finding the right coach for you is really important, because at the end of the day, you're going to be going through a journey that is based on confidential information, very private information. Most of the times, even when you're doing professional coaching, you will touch upon aspects which are highly personal. When you talk about values, you talk about belief systems, you talk about character, they are very, very private, personal things. And therefore, um, it makes sense to reach out to maybe a few coaches, read the material that they've written on the website, uh, engage in a breakthrough session with them, and understand if they are in synergy with what you stand for as a person. And when you know that so there's a whole lot of research you can do, there's a whole lot of referrals you can get, but definitely what I would suggest at the end of the day is what your gut says, because eventually it's going to be you and the coach. And if research and testimonials say otherwise, but the gut says something, I think give it equal importance, and definitely go with that, because it's about a rapport that you establish with your coach.
So you mentioned something about a breakthrough session. Can you explain this?
Okay.
And
So this is what I offer, and this is what most coaches offer, is the first session with every coach is a breakthrough session, which is a complimentary session.
so
And
there is no charges for that.
sorry.
So for that session, there is no charge. You can do
No,
that.
yes, it's complimentary. And that breakthrough session is great because one is, again, it gives you an insight into what an authentic experience and what an authentic conversation would sound like. It gives you the experience of what the coaching process is like. And it gives you a better understanding, it gives you a better understanding of the power behind in-depth questioning. And just powerful questions can lead you to very, very powerful insights, which in turn lead you to very powerful shifts.
Okay. So if somebody wants to have a breakthrough session with you, how can they get it?
Okay, so what they need to do is then need to log on to my website, which is www.behnaazsengineer.com. And once they get onto the website, they can schedule breakthrough sessions from there.
Okay. So they can just on the internet itself, they can request
Absolutely.
the session and then you will schedule it for them.
Absolutely.
All right. So if you can tell me a little about, there's a question actually. This is Komal is asking another question. She's asking, how can someone become a coach and do they need to have some intrinsic qualities for that?
Okay. So, how can someone become a coach? Someone can become, one is, of course, your certification. You go to a coaching school, you get your certification, you get your license. Uh, Qualities that are really, really important are definitely reflective, intuitive listening. You've got to be quiet in your mind so that you can actually hear what the other person is saying. So intuitive listening is extremely important. uh, Second is, I think what is very, very important is for the coaching space to be such a sacred space, you require an atmosphere of no judgment whatsoever. So there has to be involvement, but both from and a great coach will ensure that there is no judgment, of course, from the coach's end, but from the coachee's end. And that's when the breakthrough happens, when the coachee is not critical or judgmental about themselves, and the coachee has been able to create a non-judgmental space for the coachee to actually be able to share what needs to be shared.
Right.
Yes. And I think third most important is curiosity, where you are just so curious to understand what is happening in terms of limiting beliefs, or you are curious to understand more about the goals, when you're curious to understand you know just how you can take this relationship to the next level for the client, how you can quieten the space for him or her to be able to truly explore and be reintroduced to themselves. So I think that's really important.
Okay. So we keep hearing this a lot these days that coaching is a very important part of management, right?
Yes.
So there are even the business schools have been offering courses around coaching for leadership and things.
Yes.
So do you think that leaders and business managers and people like that need to learn coaching? Is it important?
Uh, I think coaching is extremely important for everyone to just understand what it is as a concept, to understand coaching.
Also to acquire the skill.
Uh, but there's a difference. So, for example, it all comes down to intent. So, while it's a great subject to have, um, if your intent is, I need to understand coaching so that I have more people who like me better and who serve me better, and your intent sometimes it's not everyone's cup of tea. So, for example, a coach is intrinsically a coach whether he did the course or he didn't do the course. You will have certain people who come from a pure intent of wanting to reintroduce the other person to himself. And when you work with pure intent, uh, whether you've been introduced to the subject or not, you will yet be a great leader. But not every great leader who's gone through a coaching course will necessarily be a great coach or a leader if the
Right.
conversation and if the intent is not pure. So, as a subject, it's important, but it's sometimes you can't use it as a facade. You can't use it as a ready reckoner. You can't use it as a quick tool to win over people, because if that's the intent, it's going to fall through.
Right. Okay. But otherwise, let's say if that's not the intent and somebody wants to create, like, why do then people emphasize on coaching as a important skill for managers?
Okay.
Or
Uh, so it goes back to authentic conversation and authentic experiences. Right now, we live in a world where we live more outside than we live inside. Okay. There's so much connectivity. There's social media. There's our phone. We're constantly on it. And genuine, authentic conversations are really, really limited. So there's a whole segment out there who scoffs at coaches, saying that, what is the need? Uh, and performance skills, confidence issues, limiting self beliefs. Why can you not do it yourself? And the reason you can't do it yourself is because you are not dedicating space to authentic conversation, which is why it also comes down to intent. So, what is your intent when you are introducing coaching skills? Is it to be more authentic as a person? Because that's the crux of coaching, to be authentic to yourself, to live by your values, to live by your beliefs, to live by your character.
okay,
So when you're coaching, by and large, when you're coaching people, a lot of my clients that I'm coaching, because they live by certain values, beliefs, characters, and they're true to that, they're able to amplify that into lives of others. So without doing a coaching course, they're actually becoming coaches themselves, because they are so pure by the values, beliefs, and characters that they want to live by, that they extend coaching um, outcomes even without going for courses, because they're having authentic experiences themselves, and that's what they want to extend to their company, to their employees, to their clients, to their vendors, to their partners.
Okay. So, we have come to the end of our session, and it's already 9 p.m. So we are going to wrap this up. If you have to leave all the listeners with something, viewers with something that, a final parting message, or even if you can, share a lesson or something that, people can actually practically apply in their lives, that would be great.
Okay. So I think I'm not sure whether we have time for a technique or a tool. We could have covered that earlier. I do want to say that, and I think most people know this as well, is that the professional space is where you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of energy. And if you're not going to hone and respect this sacred space and really give it your 100%, uh, it's it's not going to give you the results, and it's not going to help you to achieve goals that you really want to achieve in life. uh, you've you've got to invest in this space that is the professional space, and you've really got to tune into what what requirement is needed of you to perform to your optimum.
Sure. Okay. If you, I don't mind if you're going to cover a technique, we can take a few minutes extra and leave.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so this is a technique, and it happens actually in most professional spaces. Is These reruns. Okay, so for example, you've had an altercation with your boss or with your colleague or with your subordinates, and it's been quite an ugly altercation. And for whatever reasons, we stay with this sometimes hours down the line, sometimes days down the line, sometimes weeks down the line. And what we tend to do is we tend to rerun the fight or the conflict or the argument. We tend to rerun that in our heads. And each time we're rerunning that in our heads, we tend to add, we tend to add points, or we tend to add points of view or beliefs that we thought we were shortchanged of in the original argument. And in our heads, we're actually trying to win that argument or win that conflict. And therefore, we're rerunning it again and again and again and again. And sometimes we feel even really more powerful because we've thought of all the things we miss saying at the point of conflict, and we're adding that when we're doing the rerun, saying I should have also said this, I should have also said this, and we're going on increasing that list in our head till the point where we've actually in our heads been the victor of that argument, and we feel really good about it. And the really sad part about it is that that is such an elusive victory, and that is such a waste of time. And we're so focused on that conflict, and we're so focused in that argument that we've lost so much more time in the process. So when you catch yourself doing a rerun of a conflict situation, catch it there and there itself. Don't indulge in that rerun, because that's absolute waste of time.
Right.
What you need to do is you need to distract yourself. You need to physically change yourself from that physical environment, and you need to immerse yourself into any productive activity that just distracts you away from that rerun. Because we do this for different things. We do this in our personal lives, we do this in our professional lives, and this rerun it's not emotional intelligence. You're basically triggering the same emotion that you felt when you were in that conflict, and now you're amplifying that emotion into 10. And that is just so self-sabotaging.
Okay. That's very interesting. I'm sure it happens with me. I'm sure it happens with everyone.
Absolutely. It happens with everyone.
Okay. So when it happens, you got to stop it and just distract.
Recognize it. The first thing that you do in your head when you're tempted to reimagine or revisit the point of conflict, recognize that instantly. Change your physical environment. Get out, go for a walk, or do something that you enjoy doing, but do something that's absolutely immersive, and ensure that you resist going back to the point of argument in your heads.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
That's
and
it just reminded me of a story by Rabindranath Tagore, and where he actually wrote about this exact phenomenon. And he says that, no, I win all the arguments, but
absolutely, absolutely. And they're so elusive. You're basically playing on a field. Imagine you're playing cricket. Imagine there's no bowler. Imagine there's no audience, and you're batting away. And you're wasting all that time, money, energy facing balls that are not even coming at you.
right, got it.
And you're
Very
just exhausted at the end of it. And you think you've won a game that was never being played. It was over a long time ago.
right, great. Okay, I think that was a really great insight, and all of us can use it in our lives. Thank you so much for joining us, Behnaaz, and sharing your time and insights with us. And we do hope to have you back again another time, sharing some more, another, maybe another area, another specific issue. And
Absolutely.
all those who watched it, thank you very much. Definitely subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell icon so that you don't miss any further videos. We keep doing interesting videos from time to time. Every day we actually have one session 8 to 9 p.m. and that is on weekdays. And on Saturday we have 4 to 5. On Sundays we don't have an hour with LawSikho. If you think of any interesting topics, do share it in the comments. Let us know what would you like us to have in future sessions. And thank you so much. Goodbye and good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ramnuj. Was happy to be here.
Thanks. Bye.